awareness of how much changes were happening. And these have been happening slowly, but they've increased exponentially also during COVID. And we had occasion to speak with Paul, with Elaine, another time. It seems everybody share and notice there have been certain things that are transforming our also economic fabric, our neighborhood. So there's so many things we don't know because of the COVID. We are recovering, or maybe we are also still during the pandemic, but we want to be optimistic. So we want to look probably ahead and thinking that we are in a post-pandemic, but definitely we are losing retail diversity. And this, definitely makes us extremely concerned. And like, for example, Greenpoint Avenue, we had a block where each single storefront is being closed the loop, and there are probably 7 or 8. The entire block is becoming all bar and restaurant. So it's again, an indicator. Why is this happening? So we have a lot of questions, and what are we doing? Also, it was interesting to discover, that we have doing this work with community. We discovered that the Council, New York City Council, back in 2017, and I don't know if you all received it, but I believe it was forwarded by the office. I asked Marie to do that and develop a report, 72-page, from the Committee on Small Business did, together with Land Use Committee. And at that time, the chair of the Committee on Small Business, I believe, was Cornergy, Councilmember Cornergy. Councilmember Levin was also part of the committee. So all the things we put on our agenda tonight definitely are contained on this document of 2017, where recommendations were made in exactly the same topics, from neighborhood retail to current zoning and land use with the state of retail in New York City, history of retail policy, and definitely, very interesting and very ambitious 72 pages. And I don't know where we have been going after that. I believe the same issue remain, and some of that issue and topic mentioned there, definitely they become even a more severe issue today. And yeah, we're here to talk and trying to understand, what has happened in the meantime from 2017 with the Department of City Planning, with the ambitious recommendation that the Small Business Service was supposed to take over. And yes, and so that's what we're going to try to do, and all your input will be very appreciated. And also the Outreach Committee, why, together with Economic Development, and then I'll pass the word to Toby, is because we want to create a platform to have this dialogue. And I believe we didn't have this dialogue. We stopped having this dialogue. Now, during COVID, after COVID, there is one more reason. And maybe we need policy, we need parameter, we need a framework, because this is extremely important. I contacted also Evergreen. I spoke with Karen Neeb, but unfortunately, there were other conflicts tonight. But I believe they have the same concern. Entertainment industry has been prevailing even deeply into their industrial fabric, especially on the light manufacturing zone, in the M11 zoning. And yeah, I pass to you, Toby, if you want to continue, please.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add, hold on. Oh yeah, I just wanted to add, first of all, to commend Sante, who I got to know first in person and then virtually over the last 2 years, who's really been a tremendous addition to the community board, puts in a lot of time, proactively approached me. I volunteered for the ad hoc committee just because I saw how passionate he was about the neighborhood. And I really think that there's a real need for this grassroots voice. And really thank you, Elaine and Paul and everybody else who's participating with short notice. So the only thing I wanted to add is that I'm a holder of a liquor license. I've spent a lot of time trying to help people maneuver that process. And this is not about being anti-bar and restaurant. This is about really figuring out how to even the playing field, because for the neighborhood to succeed, we need all kinds of retail. The word Sante uses is your retail diversity. I have a beautiful map we give out when you come to the Williamsburg Hotel, which unfortunately we had to make a new one because a lot of those stores no longer exist. And it's people come to the community, whether it's a resident, we just had hosted a beautiful market, or it's people visiting, and they don't just want to see bars and restaurants. So I think, in this little forum, there's really dialogue to be had. I think this is a very influential neighborhood vis-a-vis the rest of the city. But to think about the dynamic at play, and the one thing that comes to mind, and I'll hand the floor back to Sante. I always tell the story of what would have happened if Bloomberg had not protected the industrial zones, and how it's played out in Williamsburg, of course, is, all kinds of companies moving in. We're all working very hard to create accessible jobs, but we're at risk now with the outdoor excess space and other elements of really making it impossible for a venue, or really a retail location that's not in the liquor business, to succeed and compete with their neighbors. And the ultimate output and the result of this is something unfortunate for everyone, whether you be a resident, a business owner, a member of the community, or even a visitor. And I think we can't solve all the problems. Some of these have to do with state level policy, some have to do with city level policy, but I think that we need to at least start the conversation and figure out, what we can do at the grassroots in the community. And thank you again to everyone who's participated. And we look forward to working closely with the North Brooklyn Chamber to help, have the voice of the community heard. So I'll hand the floor back to Sante.
Yes, so now I will pass to others, or definitely to add to what you were saying. Other things with me and Toby we have discussed really, and I felt that I was myself part of maybe one of the hipsters when I came here 25 years ago. Actually, I came here in the 80s the first time, but because I had friends, I was very young. Then I moved back to Italy. Then I came back. But, and I had a manufacturing space where, from my architectural study, I enter into designing and I self-produce. So I manufacture and I work in the art and design world. And until a few months ago, I had a 4,000 square feet of industrial N11 zoning on Metropolitan Avenue. So I thought that I was one of the individuals that add to the narrative of the Brooklyn brand, even if many did anonymously, by engaging. And people, I remember many years ago, they were coming to Williamsburg, to my studio, to look at my furniture and my design piece. And now I still do that, but if I didn't have that opportunity, even the affordability of an industrial space, it was still affordable. I mean, we had to pay for, but if you were creative, there were ways to go around. Now, many will be deprived of that opportunity for other reason. Now real estate has developed, and it's not my field to talk about that. But definitely, people like me contribute to the creation of the Brooklyn brand. And being European myself, originally, I'm a naturalized American. I had always many people, professional, creative people that they did, and now during COVID, unfortunately, they kept coming. But the one that came, they felt something was missing. People, even if we say that there is an industry and we need to focus on tourism, and this is a global phenomenon, or at least in the Western world, is happening the same in Italy. We really have to think very hard, because people came to New York certainly to shop, and the connection between entertainment, but it can't be just entertainment. People came to Williamsburg, there were so many creative business. And I work in retail design with architectural firm in the past. In one of the many things that I did as an American pioneer, I say sometime here, maybe too many jobs. But today, and I'm in contact with others, still do retail design. This is another very big issue, important issue, that still people will need to experience physically retail. You can order a pair of socks you already purchased 2 million times for running, you could do on Amazon, but the narrative in New York, if we're taking away the narrative of people making things and having this curated, even if you don't make, but the fact that some creative people, some creative brain could curate something and propose it, bring it to a plate with the vision of being New Yorker, being open to the world. This is our recipe for success. We have to look back at our past if we want to succeed in the future. And because that's always an important reference. It is in architecture, it's in urbanistic. But definitely the lack of an holistic, and myself, I questioned, what's the master plan? And maybe we should all question together, what is the master plan? Because we need to think of this holistically, it's too easy to say, oh, now everything is online. And whatever data was built in 2017, today has changed. So we're gonna need to call in professional and the academic too, to really understand what is the data today. But we can just let it go and say, because it's unfair to say, oh, we are anti-business. What kind of business? Maybe people envision different businesses, you know, but.
Dante, why don't we take, I thought we should maybe ask either Paul or Elaine.
Yes,
on behalf
absolutely.
of the North Chamber to really, we'd love to get any thoughts you have and the feedback you're hearing from the businesses in the community as to, you know, what's the state of play right now post-COVID with their businesses. We'd love to hear from either one or both of you.
Okay, I'll go first. Paul and I have been having some meetings with some local people, and Francoise is on. She was on here.
She's there. I see her.
Okay, one of them was Francoise, and I'm not sure. I think it was Greenpoint Avenue, and there were 5 liquor licenses given in one block. This is exactly what you're talking about, that we don't want this to happen. We've got to have the diversity back of the small, you know, cute little shops that make Williamsburg and Greenpoint, Bushwick, you know, what people want to see when they come into a neighborhood. They don't want to go by 5 bars in a row. So, you know, if we're not careful, we're going to start to look like, you know, Miami Beach here with everything. So, I don't know, Paul, do you want to add something to that?
Well, you know, I don't need to tell anybody that, you know, it's still depressing to see the amount of empty storefronts that exist that we had hoped we might start seeing occupied, and they haven't been yet, and they're still sitting there, and they're just getting uglier by the day because they're being used, you know, as sleep headquarters or graffiti headquarters or whatever. So, you know, the neighborhood visually is really taking a hit and continuing to take a hit. It doesn't have that, it doesn't have that luster that, you know, even though it was kind of, you know, a little bit of a off the beaten path radical luster, still had a sense to it that, you know, you appreciated visually when you came into our neighborhood, and now you can't help but feel a bit depressed in what you see. I mean, with regard to what Elaine was saying, yeah, it's very true. You know, I guess it's surprising, but it's become much easier just to set up a bar or a restaurant or something, and, you know, food and beverage than it is to do a boutique or any sort of shop right now, which is interesting because we all know that it's still not easy to do that because the SLA is just still kind of all over the place with what they're doing as far as timing goes. We still get a lot of people that come to us and tell us that they're just sitting and waiting for what's going on. So I guess that's a good thing, because if they weren't delaying people, it probably would be 10 on one block as opposed to 5. You know, the other thing that, Santi, that you mentioned, which is a reality, is that the only thing that we do continue to see an influx on is brown cardboard boxes that get delivered by, you know, Amazon. And everybody, you know, no matter how often you try and preach about loving local and shopping local and supporting your neighborhood and that, it's falling on deaf ears quite a bit, simply because the other component is so easy to do. And I guess everybody got so used to it, you know, during the last 18, 19 months, that now we're faced with trying to break a new habit that just makes it easy for people not to do what we're asking them to do. The one positive thing, though, is that we have, as a chamber, we put on a new membership individual that's been working with us for a couple of months now. And she's very active within the community. By that, I mean hitting the streets and talking to people. And she surprisingly comes back to us every week and says, I've got 3 new businesses that are interested in joining. I got 4 new businesses that are interested in joining. So there's a lot of, maybe not a lot, but there is rebirth and it's happening. I guess you have to go looking for it. You have to reach out to it and you have to, not expect it to just happen overnight. But we do feel somewhat uplifted, let's say, by, the reports that she gives back to us and these are not, she's not talking about, food and beverage places. She's talking about little shops, little boutiques or whatever they are. And, so, that's a positive thing. So, but whatever it is, it's, I think, as far as we are concerned, our position as a chamber is, it's going to take a long time. It's not happening anytime soon. The ramping up is not quick, and it's not direct. It's dragging, and it's upsetting, is what it is. So that's that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question, Paul, because you mentioned about the people coming and asking for help, and then Elaine talked about the 5.
Yeah.
Do you have feedback or even just gutter insight as to why the stores opening sooner are food and beverage establishments versus more traditional businesses? Because you would think, and I just see this firsthand, and even myself as a landlord, when there's empty spaces, the landlords are just desperate to get a tenant in. We signed a short-term lease for a year on Grand Street. We never would have contemplated a user like that for a
Right.
year just to fill the space. So it should be, and you see in Soho, I mean, I've walked around, there's a lot of young boutiques coming in, people that couldn't necessarily have afforded that rent that are signing shorter term leases. And we
Mhm.
should talk offline about maybe an initiative we could do to engage with landlords around that. But why do you think food and beverage more than anything else in this
Well,
moment?
it's funny. It's surprising because, as I kind of mentioned, it's much more difficult. All right, yeah, if you're walking into some place that's already built out and you're basically just going to take it over and hang some new posters and, paint a wall or whatever, and then sign up for a liquor license, then it's a relatively easy to do. But normally it's a grind in order to be able to do that, especially if you're building out a kitchen or building out a bar or something like that. So we're surprised actually that it's happening that rapidly. And I don't know if it has to do with the fact, I mean, a lot of people that we speak to refer to the perception of North Brooklyn now. And the perception of North Brooklyn now is led by F&B. It's like, it's where I go to eat, it's where I go to drink. And we don't hear enough people saying it's where I go to shop. And it used to be where you go to shop, where you go to look in galleries, where you would do things like that. And somehow that has fallen by the wayside. Now, obviously, the pandemic had a lot to do with street traffic and things like that, people walking around and happening into shops. But the perception, or let's call it the brand of North Brooklyn, doesn't seem to include small business any longer. It doesn't seem to include little boutiques. It doesn't seem to be the place where people would go and, like some of you have, take a shot and let me take a storefront and let me see what I can make of it. The few that we know that continue took a shot at it, but now they're making the majority of their business profit online, which allows them to continue to keep their brick and mortar open. But just as a freestanding brick and mortar, and I don't, quite honestly, I don't think either Elaine or I really know. We know that the landlords are desperate and we know that a lot of them are cutting deals or whatever, but I have no idea exactly what they're asking. And I have no idea if some individual who makes jewelry in their bedroom now wants to open a shop, if it's actually going to be within reach of them or not. Don't know. The only thing I do know is that as I walk the streets, I can't help but see crowds still pouring out of every bar and every, restaurants are crowded, lines inside and outside, and lines outside of bars. So there are people around, but that seems to be where their attention is right now. And maybe it's this, this period of celebration or whatever, and then eventually it'll wind down. But you know, I don't know. I really don't know why all these people have come out of the woodwork and decided they're going to open bars and restaurants, and they are. You know, one of the other things that always confused me too, and this probably isn't the time or the topic that we should be discussing, but I'll throw it out there anyhow. Um, we have a lot of friends in Babar, or claim to be from Babar, or say they're from Babar. But then, when we bring up Babar to somebody who supposedly is in Babar, they say, oh, well, Babar is basically Felice and Dave. And that's, so, I mean, if there was an actual organization that was Babar, and we could interact with them, and we can, get in touch with them and exchange information, and find out a little bit about how they're thinking and what's going on. I understand it's basically nothing more than a every now and then Google group right now. And, you would think that um, a group that has that kind of presence in North Brooklyn would be a little more of a true presence, of more of an organization, because we'd love to work with them. We have great relationship with the couple of people that call themselves Babar, but I can tell you at any day of the week, I have no idea how many people, how many different organizations or institutions are included in Babar as members. It could only be one or two, could be 150. I have no idea. So we'd like to be more in touch with them if there was truly a Babar. That's it.
So I will tell you, just as an aside, that I met a gentleman last week who says he's taken over for Felice. So I'll connect you and as to whether that organization is still open. But I had a question and maybe thought, it was curious to get your input on. So, one example I point out, I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Bathhouse, which opened on the corner of North 10th and Berry,
Yeah.
which obviously they started building out pre-COVID. But basically what they've done is, I don't know what their plan was originally, and this was their plan from the beginning. It's a beautiful space. It's a phenomenal bathhouse. And now they have a restaurant, so to speak, on the ground floor that's helping sustain their business. But think about this. If they were only a bathhouse and not a restaurant, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the use of the sidewalk and the street. So what that means as a tenant, so to speak, is that I don't know if it's 20% or 25%, but there's some very significant premium that they're getting, which has the effective impact of lowering their rent per square foot. That if they were only a bathhouse, if there would have been, like, let's do this theoretical exercise. So bathhouse number one and Russian Banya number two, and they're both competing, and one of them wasn't going to be a restaurant, they would have less space paying the same rent. So if you extrapolate from there, again, as an owner of a restaurant and not someone that's against free enterprise, but we've created this dynamic where there's an unfair advantage today for anyone operating a food establishment that has now free use of the street, the sidewalk.
Sure.
That makes the challenge even greater, because you talk to what a landlord's charging, but of course in the post-COVID world everything's negotiable. But if you're a clothing store or a bookstore or whatever an entrepreneur wants to sell, and you're negotiating against someone that knows they could put up a structure and expand with another, seating for another 30 people outside, it makes it like an impossible situation. I mean, it's like a Gordian knot that you can't unwind.
Yeah, no, that's
So I don't
very
know if
true. I
you're
mean,
getting
when
any
it was,
feedback on this, yeah.
yeah, it was very true. I mean, we reacted to it when, over the past 19 months when they first decided to do that. And there were all these different advantages that were given to bars and restaurants. And then, okay, yeah, one time they said, oh no, now stores can actually move their goods out onto the sidewalk as well and sell. And, it's like, come on, give me a break. I mean, who can actually move enough of their goods out onto the store, as opposed to setting up a 6-foot table and putting a few pairs of socks and a couple pieces of jewelry that you have to take in and out every day. But for some reason, the city felt that, well, we're balancing it out a little bit now, but that did absolutely nothing. It was silly. It was ridiculous. I can go out and I can build a structure outside, and I can, put in a few chairs and a few tables. And like you said, it expands my you know, my restaurant or my bar by 20, 25, 27, 28, 30%, but I can't move stock out of my store. First of all, they won't let me do it because I'm not a bar and restaurant. So, you know, it's totally unbalanced. It's ridiculous. I mean, I know, you know, this is one of the things when Elaine and I were talking months ago with Francoise also about, you know, a little boutique trying to take advantage of that great opportunity that the city gave them by saying you can put a card table out on the sidewalk and sell your goods. It was a joke. You know, it was just a
Also,
joke.
to tap into what Paul and Toby were saying, I mean, I can give neither our portion of community in Greenpoint, but definitely I've been connected to other group in the West Village, in the Lower East Side, you know, where, you know, they already have seen changes even before COVID. And so just to say to what you were saying, but going back, because there's another factor, I believe, from our analysis, from our experience, right? At the heat of the pandemic, when the clothing store actually created boutique here on Franklin and Milton Street, the manufacturer pieces. Really, that 2-3 months were very hard, and they left. And the landlord maybe wasn't very tolerant either. And definitely he knew there was going to be somebody that could pay $10,000, $12,000. So it's interesting why there was definitely a true claim for many entertainment business in the city, of which were hit very hard, and they require help. And so many of our neighbors here that, you know, of which we love, you know, that they have business and they needed support. But many, they said they did well between the community, between the order online, between the structure outside. But what is surprising, Paul, that at that time, there was an exponential growth of liquor license. The community board one had problems, still has problem. You know, you can even interview the people. So what before 30, now 65 license in a month. Or what tell that us? The expansion of a footprint of a 200 square feet, 300 square feet store that before it would only be a boutique. And so if you were one of the landlord, that's it. That's what you can get. You can get $10,000 a month now. And that's the absurdity, because there weren't parameters and policy. We say, hold on a second, we have a bar and restaurant. They were here before, they are in difficulty. They don't need additional competition. We have allowed to come others to take a space. And other dynamic, because this we know very well, when you see, you can open as a pop-up for 6 months, for 1 year, for 2 years, but when you are a bar and restaurant, and this is the model in all the city, and Toby knows very well, you need 10, 15 years leases. That's what you do. So the moment we lose a 300 square feet storefront, a 500 square feet storefront, and this in Greenpoint by the Historic District, this in Williamsburg around where you are too, the majority, because the big spaces we know, maybe you only a big bar, a big restaurant can take it, or a supermarket, you know, but the smaller storefront are the one they are at most dangerous. That the one that give opportunity, and I believe is not just we didn't give a chance to stay empty because the landlord immediately occupied. And I have neighbors that I know, they are landlords on the storefront. And yes, during the pandemic, they gave it like 3 months to do some work, maybe 4 months, they made a deal. But then after that, they're going to pay. They were getting double the money they were getting before. So, you know, this is something New York City Council had envisioned before, to find a way, how do we put policy? And I do have understanding also, Paul, that I believe something I'm very passionate. This is a city planning issue. We have to envision how we want land use decision. They transform economically. They can transform the social fabric. And where is that 10 minutes walk neighborhood we were talking, 10 minutes walk neighborhood where you could have everything, where individuals still could have a sort of American dream. Another big issue into the economic, people that have no higher level of education, they cannot work from home remotely, they cannot make $100,000 or even $50,000 a year. These were the people that if they could pay $3,000, $5,000 a month, they could start a business and be independent. And this is still a reality in urban environment.
Mhm.
You know, we just not giving that possibility. But this is my opinion, but definitely I love other to say more, because yes, it's true. But and then once they take a space. Once a space goes to the entertainment industry, it's gone forever. First, because lease are 10, 15 years. And then there is a tradition where the space is taken and is grandfather. So even if you have a new liquor license, it's going to give you a grandfather. That's give justification also to New York State Liquor Authority, which, you know, they also have a responsibility, but maybe we didn't communicate with the state either, because we had a 500-foot rule that somehow was indirectly establishing parameter, right, where we could automatically say, hold on, now there are 5 licenses, are too many. But we had here on Franklin, one block, 15 licenses. 15. It means, and so are we communicating to the states together with the city, with our public representative? I mean, really, this is a desire for a framework. I'm glad Lincoln Wrestler is also here, so you can hear, you know,
Hi, Ms. Santi, this is Foster.
concern
I've
from the
lived in this
community.
neighborhood all of my life, and I've seen the changes from industrial and to where it is today. And I understand what you're saying. I sit on the SLA committee. It's difficult for us to make these decisions, whether people get licenses or not, because if we say no, they go to wherever the state liquor authority and they get a yes. So I'm just going to say, please don't throw us under the bus. Also, I keep hearing North Brooklyn, old resident, North Brooklyn, Williamsburg, please. This is what I mean by change. We are missing a lot of retail stores. And I feel it because I grew up in the era of good old John's Bargain Store, Woolworths, all these little stores you can go and get clothing, things for your house, last minute shopping for a birthday present. Even we used to have S&M, which is now changed. How, I don't know if anyone came to Williamsburg on this end to do a survey to see what the people need and want. I hear North Williamsburg. I call this Williamsburg, North, South, East, and West. Williamsburg, the whole Williamsburg. So we're talking about liquor licenses and all the bars. I'm sick of them too. I don't drink, period.
You know, I believe, Julia, I'm glad
Let's see.
Well, hold on, let her finish. Let Julia finish.
Let's try to collaborate about how we can make this a change. I mean, I keep hearing, basically what I'm hearing is we don't want this. We don't want this. How can we change this? Like people say, how do we change the narrative? How do we get our neighborhood back to being what it was when we did have shops, when we did have stores? I mean, like you said, every block has at least 5 bars on it. And with this pandemic, which we are still in, I too shop on Amazon because I don't want to be in the crowds of the stores. And I miss the stores. I miss all those little stores that I could just run to. Oh my goodness, I've run out of dish liquid. I have to run up here. Oh my God, I need a pot holder. I need to go here. I don't have that. The 99-cent store might have it, but there's no guarantee. But how, as a committee, and we're pulling in another committee, how do we reach out to the community of Williamsburg to see what the people want? And has that been done through the entire Williamsburg, not just North Brooklyn, which is North Brooklyn, Williamsburg? That's my question. And let's see, how do we work to do that?
I want to just respond. First of all, Julia,
let me just tell Julia that
I'm sorry.
maybe about 8 years ago, I'm not sure about the time frame, but city planning did come down and go through the commercial district, storefront by storefront. I wish Karen was here because she could probably fill that in. When they did the change of what was going on with the retail, that was a study that was done. I don't know if I still have it but city planning did do a comprehensive study because they were concerned about Grant Street, what kind of businesses were going in there. And the other thing I just want to say, is the state is going to look for things that are going to be revenue producing. And selling a t-shirt or a pair of pants is not going to produce the money that you get from food and liquor. So, I mean, everything's in their hands. We can only make recommendations. That's what we do with the committee, is to try to get them to sign stipulation, make sure we give that to the state. We try to work with it that way. Otherwise, we have no say. And we do not grant licenses. We make recommendations to them, about them to the state. And that's all I have to say.
Uh,
No, and I want to also
absolutely
add to that.
agree.
Thank you, Marie. Julia, this is not at all, we understand how challenging it is to be on the liquor committee as residents in the community who are under this pressure and this constant assault without much, only having recommendation power. So I think the goal of this open forum now, where economic development, where I've unfortunately almost never had a quorum, and Sante, who maybe is better at recruiting than I am because he gets people to come, is really to try to open this dialogue and think how people like yourself who are on multiple committees, is there something more to do to come up with a better approach to putting forth the view of the community? Well, we won't say north or south or east or west, the view of the community with regard to this major problem. And I just echo what Sante said. I mean, I think the biggest issue is once a location goes the route of a nightlife venue, it's virtually impossible to get it back. And it's a complicated issue, and there's no committees at full, certainly, because we're all just, none of us have any power really other than our voice. But you make some very valid points. I grew up also, we had like a convenience store that had everything. You could buy your notebook for school and your erasers and a pot. And then at one point there was a fire, and then the owners decided not to reopen, and now it's a restaurant. So it's I think we all remember a moment when there was it was a family-owned store, and we literally house gifts, like you said, big birthday presents and school supplies. That's where I took my kids for years to get school supplies. So I think it's a complicated issue, and we need to start at least by isolating what it is and trying to work together to come up with a plan and what we think makes sense. And that's all I wanted to add. But thank you, Julia.
Yeah, because this has never happened before this scale. Little by little it's happened, but now it's so tangible, and definitely, we need to find a way. And it's even unfair because I've been attending the SLA review committee, working with this portion of the community, and we've been sending it out to the Greenpoint Coalition, and the Greenpoint Coalition has taken a job which you shouldn't even take on, to sign support agreement, where to put in place at least parameters. I mean, it's unfair. It's unfair to the community. It's unfair to the community board, to the SLA review committee, to go through like all this license and be in that position where you have to say supported or not supported, and the state, despite the recommendation of the community board, even when there were no, and there were like 15 licenses within like a block, they were granting a license. But again, it shouldn't be a battle against the license. It should be a battle, and that's maybe what we like to transform, to really have a framework where maybe multiple committees can work together, the economic development, the outreach, have a meter in the community, and understanding, how organically, how holistically we evaluate our block, because it's true, this community here that is present, is active, is advocating for things. We can have a meter how, things are changing. Even the SLA review committee doesn't know. People don't live in all the community, but we are here, and many members are here tonight because we are involved deeply into this dynamic, and definitely we need, our representative, our council representative, our assembly representative.
Sunday, do you want me to say hello?
Yeah,
okay.
please. I
Sorry.
was going to pass it to you. That's why.
Okay,
Fritz
sorry, I
Watts
have
has
to
had
go.
her.
I'm so
Fritz
sorry.
Watts has had her hand raised for a while.
Okay, I
FYI.
can leave. It's fine. You guys can go on. It's okay.
Go ahead, Lincoln. Go ahead, please.
Go ahead, Lincoln.
Okay. Sorry about that. I really want to just thank you all for having me and for organizing this. And I think that the lack of retail diversity that we are increasingly experiencing across Williamsburg and Greenpoint is a critical challenge, and one that we really need to collectively prioritize together. I think that the crux of the challenge of seeing an increased concentration of in the hospitality industry and not enough other uses. I think it's being keenly felt by neighbors, and I definitely agree that a greater retail mix, more small businesses and boutiques supporting local entrepreneurs, especially women and people of color, is critically important. And I also think that an increased focus on the arts would be really welcomed and appreciated. I found in other neighborhoods when we conduct surveys and really get input from residents on the types of businesses that they'd like to see in the neighborhood, it is incredibly helpful from a recruitment standpoint. It makes it easier for us to approach entrepreneurs and small businesses that might exist in nearby areas to open a second shop in our community because they can see that the community wants it. I also think that, in addition to the great work of the North Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, we should think about additional, supporting their efforts to organize businesses and think about additional opportunities there. I really do support business improvement districts. And if there's an appetite among property owners and small businesses in the north side and in Greenpoint in particular, I think there's a real opportunity there for us to do more and potentially create a strong vehicle and a strong voice for bringing in the types of businesses that we need and ensuring local hiring. We've got 8 NYCHA developments across Community Board 1. We have not done nearly a good enough job in ensuring that our local community, especially low-income residents, are benefiting from the economic opportunity that exists in our neighborhood. And so I really hope that we can work together, Community Board 1 and local elected officials, to work with small businesses, to work with new economic development entities, to hire locally. And, when projects go through the ULURP process from the community board to the council, I want to help make sure that we're being deliberate about bringing in the right types of mixed uses, the right types of businesses, and that they're hiring locally. I also think that we need to look at how we can incentivize our property owners, our landlords, to bring in the right types of small businesses that are really meeting the needs in the neighborhood, and interested in exploring ideas with you all on how we can do that. I know that it can be frustrating from the community board perspective to see liquor license application after liquor license application. It's challenging for neighbors. We need to be carefully reviewing these applications and working together along with our state elected officials to push back where it's appropriate. And, it's not anti-bar or anti-restaurant. It's just to say that we've got to be deliberate in our planning. And I think that's the spirit of this meeting, if we don't plan, then things just happen around us. And so I really appreciate Sante and Toby, your efforts to bring us together, and everybody from CB1 and the community members that are here, and look forward to being a partner with you all to try to be helpful in deepening the retail diversity and the mix of community and economic development initiatives that are happening around our neighborhoods. And I'm excited to get to work with you all. So thank you so much. Really
And
appreciate
thank
the
you for taking
opportunity.
the time to join us. We really appreciate that. We're going to be in touch. Thank
Absolutely.
you, Lincoln.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day,
Lincoln.
guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
This was very important to us that you were here tonight.
Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting me. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
your word. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
So I think Francois was waiting to speak.
Francois, yes.
Francois, go ahead. We're here with you.
So I just kind of want to circle back because I live on the block that has I think over 5 liquor licenses now. But I think we have to kind of continue to have kind of cross functional conversations, because the other thing that's kind of concerning is DUIs are up 72% to last year. So we're building a bar business. People are also coming to the bar business, and that is also causing us to not have safe streets, which is, concerning because there have been deaths in our neighborhood. But so just a bit about my background. I have 20 years of retail experience from brands as large as like J. Crew, Club Monaco, but my part of the job has always been to work on collaborations and work with small businesses and small brands. So I've worked with over 5,000 small businesses across the United States. I think one of my biggest concerns in terms of retail diversity is frankly that part of when we started the North Brooklyn Small Business Owners was that our elected officials weren't really reaching out to the small businesses. And, Elaine and Paul kind of would joke that we were the boots on the ground and would report back into them. And it was it's been a great collaboration, but I really think that city planning needs to go back out there and, not just in our neighborhood, but I think this is citywide because it's on the Upper East Side, it's Soho, it's the East Village. and really look where those vacancies are. And, you know, Toby, you touched on this earlier, but then also to talk with the landlords, because nobody wants, you know, their space to remain empty. But this is all over our city. And I know that we can kind of only focus on Greenpoint, Williamsburg, and Bushwick, but, you know, we can be an example for the rest of the city, not just, you know, build back better, but what does that mean? Not just retail diversity, but how do we also build back ethically and sustainably? I think Ovenly, which is, you know, the bakery on our block, one of the things that, you know, I think they've been here for over a decade, their hiring practice is they hire formerly incarcerated individuals. And, you know, they are such a gem in the community and they're so loved, but that's also one of the reasons why, because not only do they give back to the community, you know, but they're really taking on a different hiring practice, you know, so there's so many different layers to this cake in terms of how to bring our community back to life. You know, it's not just nightlife. It's also, you know, there's a store called Camp, which is kind of like an indie kids store for toys. And their first shop was at the Flatiron District. And it actually was an old restaurant space. So it was huge. And so up front are the toys. And then in the back, they had basically like an indoor playground, but they would change it quarterly. And as they've grown, they opened one in Hudson Yards. And what they brilliantly did, and we went this weekend, our family, is they've taken over the entire 5th floor of Hudson Yards. And they have basically turned it into, you know, it's very clearly abandoned and empty retail stores. But it's a play space for kids, you know, and you pay $35 per ticket. But they've really reimagined what retail can look like, but not only what retail can look like, but how to create those spaces for the community. So it's time, I really think it's just time for total and complete out of the box thinking, you know, to welcome independent brands and businesses back into New York City.
And
Thank
I
you,
see that,
Francois.
I see that Dell is on, and Dell, I feel like I sort of missed the boat. I know that there was some sort of a zoning, I don't know if it was a permanent change in terms of the ability to have the restaurant structures. Do you know, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, and if you don't have the information, I was just curious if maybe Asante, you know, what is the state of play in terms of the exterior restaurant structures? Is it something that has to be
Well,
renewed annually? Is it now a permanent situation for us?
well, there is to say, and then also Ben Soliter is here from council member. I know Levin. I know we'll have to go somewhere else soon. But I'm gonna maybe we can have Ben say something on that and saying more as has been with Steve Levin, even when that retail diversity document.
Yeah, so Ben, I
was
just
prepared.
asked about the structure.
Yeah.
If it's,
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
story is right
I
now.
heard that.
Yeah.
The vote, which was the vote on there's a resolution making a permanent process under the domain of the DOT. You've heard the presentation was at CB1 a while ago, but that vote it was supposed to be next week, and it was pushed back to the next administration. So there's no date right now. It just won't be voted on next week. So that I
So
guess.
obviously, most of us on this call think it's a good thing, just because we feel that there has to be more input from the community about something that's so probably the biggest impact on retail diversity is the ability to expand in those structures. He's saying basically for now it's shelved and that it'll get picked up under the new administration and the new council.
Yes, you can look under our zoning application portal, zap.com or nyczap.com, but look up NYC zoning application portal and you can find the text and the next actions. It just says it's been to the community boards, I think is the last action, but you can keep track of it then or check into Lincoln's office. So yeah, that's sort of where that is. Should I offer some thoughts, Sante, or do you want to?
No, please. I want you to
Yeah.
say more.
Hold on,
and-
Ben. I'll start by saying that I'm very relieved to hear that, because when Sante called me, I thought like I missed a boat and I was asleep.
No,
And
I
so
thought
this is
so
very
too.
good news.
It
I
was,
know the presentation was, but we didn't understand what the recourse was to even weigh in. So this is very good news for us in terms of our
yeah,
effort.
I thought it was going to happen next week, and then somebody else asked me the question, and I looked into it. So, I've seen obviously the increase in the nightlife of Greenpoint, and Williamsburg is sort of a sailed ship in that respect. Over the years, there's nobody would disagree that retail diversity is important. That's why malls have many different stores. They don't have one store, and everybody wants to live somewhere where they can go get those school supplies or clothes or get a drink or dinner or whatever, or clothes and all that kind of stuff. We work or live and work in a free market environment, a capitalist free market environment. So the reason those are all happening is, in the neighborhood is because they're all making money. I assume most of them, or some of them, might be, whether or not they are, if they open, they are thinking they're going to make money, and either they do or they close and another bar opens. I think a lot of what Lincoln said and what Francois said is great. I think, we need to encourage local hiring. We need to encourage hiring of hard to hire populations like the formerly incarcerated. But we also have to sort of start lower, like in schools and high schools or in college, about opening businesses and looking at how to plan a neighborhood. I mean, city planning, we all said during the campaign, we need comprehensive planning. That doesn't say that this block's going to have, 2 liquor stores and a restaurant and a clothing store. It just says that we're going to have some controls over how that happens. And that's a long-term process. But, we have to, I think bids, I do think are great. North Brooklyn Chamber, hello, Paul and Elaine. I haven't been by for a while. I apologize. I will come by soon. But, they do great stuff to promote their neighborhoods. So I think that kind of structure, the small business group that Francois helped with, very important. But you need to get out there and promote it to the community. You can't promote it. There's not enough people here to open enough businesses. So, promoting Greenpoint as Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Bushwick as a great place to open small shops, other than alcohol and restaurants. You have to spread the word. You have to encourage people to open businesses in the way that they want, and I think that really is a pipeline. You're telling a landlord that they can't open a restaurant or a bar isn't, if that's what they think they can make money, that's, there's a certain amount of free will that we should let them have, and that exists, obviously. But can we ask, like we just did the One Wife and 79 Quay ULURPs. Both of them have commitments to work with you guys on retail diversity. They're not hard and fast. If they can't find a local jeweler or a local boutique to open, they're going to have to open something. Are there tax incentives that we could look at on the state level? Maybe. I'm not sure. That's a little bit tricky sometimes, but can we ask, like we had, I'm going to bring up a subject, a sensitive subject, but with River Ring, we asked that they provide job training money to St. Nick's so that they can serve their population better. That's a minor win, but it's a good win. So there are things like that we can ask of developers and small businesses. So it's like you can't, again, instead of targeting like this block has to have such and such, try to make the growth happen naturally to people who might want to open another business but feel that it's a little overwhelming or there's not the right support. I guess that's why I'll say that for now. Right now I'm trying to figure out where the air train is, but to get home, I guess I'm taking an elevator. So that's, I think that it's definitely also a multi-level. It's federal, state, and city government that has to do this. They all have their role to play. So I don't know. I can't tell on my phone who else is here, but obviously Lincoln was. I don't know, or no state people here.
No,
No.
I believe Senator Kavanaugh had an event. They had an event on Brooklyn Heights, so I'm assuming.
Okay.
So they didn't respond. I mean, we sent the invitation.
Oh, okay. No, I'm sure they're busy. It's always hard to make stuff, especially around this time of year. but-
Hopefully next time. I know,
And-
Ben, you're not going to be in the capacity of the council office, but maybe you'll be as a member of the community. As an
Well, hopefully,
activist.
I am trying to stay around, so I'll let
You
you
said
know.
that. You said
I'll let
that.
you
That's
know.
why.
I found the air train, but I'm still can hang on. So
Yeah, I mean, still space for you. Anything you want to keep saying, or we pass
Um,
it forward?
no, I guess that's I guess it is that I just want to re-emphasize or say that it is that balance of people want to make money. They want their buildings to make them money. They may want to. It might be their lifelong dream to open a nightlife establishment. That's something they should be allowed to do. But you have to just find ways to incentivize other things. I mean, we are not a planned society. We're not a planned economy. They tend not to work out too well, though I am far from a capitalist, let me tell you. But that's where we are.
Yeah,
so-
Ben, but I pointed something before. It was the 500-foot law, the New York State 500-foot law.
Yes, yeah.
Definitely was a way to limit the number for whatever reason is there. We don't know, but it still exists. It's just not been enforced. Maybe for the reason that you were saying, others were saying, the states still make money, and that's easy. You want to cash in, but I believe, unfortunately, we have to look at this deeply and not superficially. Maybe that's already a tool that already exists. We just need our state representative to make sure that when the community asks and when the advisory input from the community board comes into the table, it means that there is a reason, and that's where the New York State Legal Authority should listen and say, hold on, you are triggering, there's already 5, it means these other 2-3 storefront left, they will have to be something else.
Anything
Yeah,
that's anything that's an existing law, you should definitely work to enforce. There's no doubt about that.
But I also think, especially just going back to my block, what happened in the pandemic is that there were 3 buildings were bought. They were affordable housing. There were artists that lived there, and they were flipped, and now they're all those first ground floor apartments are now going to be bars. So it's not,
Yeah.
it's also about, affordable housing, which,
yeah.
it seems kind of crazy that could happen so quickly, but the person came in and that was their goal, is they just wanted bars to be in there, because someone who has a bar and can pay $10,000 a month, that rent stabilized artist who's been living there for 15 to 20 years, they're gone, and so I think that's the other thing that's happening is New York City, and maybe I'm looking at this through because I have 2 art degrees also, but it's, it's a city of artists, and it's a city of artists as commerce. And we are losing that. And to not have, art and commerce, which can be fashion, which can be music, which can be, there's to be able to curate a space is also through an artistic lens. And
Yes.
we're losing that. And this is the moment. Like, I really feel like the next 2 years are probably the most important for the future of our city.
No, our New York people come to New York because of the arts, the fashion, the nightlife. We can't lose any of it. I totally agree. I mean, again, it's a capitalist force that's driving it. So we obviously regulate capitalism and free markets all the time. So how do we regulate it in this case?
Okay, Guy, I see
Right.
that several people at the
Sorry.
poll, and Steve Chesler had his hand raised digitally, and now Paul and also Dale. Who wants to go first, guys?
Steve was up first.
Okay, Steve Chesler then.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I feel like I mean, a lot of good points have made, and I mean, it's much, I feel like it comes to rent, to, you know, like to commercial rent and city tax policy, state tax policy. So it just seems like landlords are, you know, incentivized to, you know, they have to, you know, not only, you know, cover their costs, but they want to go beyond, you know, to have the largest return on their investment. Then they go for the liquor and the food. But I think going back to like, what can our board do? I feel like a couple people have touched on, I feel like we need data from the district. And I know I think the land use committee, when we had a, you know, text amendment related to hotel special permits, I believe we hired somebody, I don't know if we hired someone, but tasked I think a graduate student or a graduate program to study hotels in the district. I just wonder if the board should, you know, maybe embark on something similar to survey the neighborhood. Just, you know, just not just take the word of like 10 board members, but really go out there and find out what the need is and how the predominance of and growing predominance of bars is having, you know, is having a negative impact on the neighborhood, and block by block. And as Julia touched on, just lack of access to essentials. You know, it's just harder and harder to come in contact with those. And then maybe the end of that is how can, you know, property owners be incentivized to rent their spaces to, you know, a diverse group of businesses. And one thing that popped to mind is the incentivized zone where 25 Kent and number of others where, you know, they get a density bonus if they include a light manufacturing business in the floor. That maybe, you know, property owners, say like on a Lorimer or Manhattan Avenue, they're giving, you know, an option with their zoning where if they include a certain use group of businesses, then they can get that, you know, 20% increase in density or something like that. You know, tools like that. But I feel like in terms of the community board, I feel like if we're going to, you know, we're going towards some sort of resolution, you know, the board to make a statement, I feel like we need the community behind us to do that rather than just, you know, we obviously have some people here directly from the ground who own businesses or own homes in the neighborhood or rent in the, you know, I mean, I mean, in the vacuum, I agree with Ben. Yeah, we're in a free market society, but I feel like we can put, you know, if things are having a negative impact, you know, whether, you know, something's physically toxic or emotionally or mentally toxic, you know, just as Francois talked about, just, you know, the DUI count is off the charts, affecting so many different things. And I think rules can be put in place, but then again, on the other side of it, the economics incentivizing landlords to rent to businesses other than bars and restaurants.
I'll just add that, Steve, to your point, that there is a model with the Fresh program where in certain low income areas, an owner would get a bonus even in a residential building to put in, Julia, to your point, a grocery store that hits certain parameters. So I think that you make a lot of really good points, and, you know, I'll leave it to Sante to think about what, you know, how we sort of formalize this conversation. And it's not about solving things today, but really getting the group together, people that are passionate about resolving this and figuring out how to get buy-in from the community. But so much of what you basically described, there are other systems that have been put in place to try to incentivize the right kind of uses just for that diversity. So very good point. Thank you.
Well, there is Paul and Dale. They both want to say. I let you maybe Dale, Paul. I don't know what either of you, whatever one.
Well, go ahead, Del.
Okay, thanks. I do have another commitment. I did mention that when you know, I responded to your invitation. So thank you for inviting me. I think I have a thought that with respect to what everybody said, but in particular Ben and also Steve. Ben said he's far from a capitalist. Personally, I am a capitalist, and I have said for years that I don't think that we really have a true free market anymore. I think that we messed with the concept of a free market long ago in many things, but in particular when the city started allowing developers to have the sense that they could easily pay speculative prices for properties, get, you know, understanding or expecting that they're going to get all these variances to build, you know, the affordable housing, and then they put the little bit of, I mean, to build the market rate housing, and they put the little bit of affordable in as a carrot. And it's not really affordable. We know that it's not affordable to the people who've been in this community. It's nonsense. So they pay they pay these incredibly high prices, and then of course they turn around and they're going to charge these enormous rents. So I you know, clearly diversity in our retail and our commercial spaces is what any good town or city should be able to plan for. My sense is there's been very little planning. It's been spoken about, you know, we talk about, oh yes, we have city planning, and yet whenever the land use committee or the community board wants the city to deny or condition these variances and these zoning changes by saying, no, you have to have more affordable housing, you have to have true affordable housing. You shouldn't have such a high building that's completely out of context. So where does that go? It goes nowhere. And so now we're talking about what do we do to incentivize developers to rent spaces to retailers who can't afford to pay the kind of rents that bars and restaurants can pay. And so what do we do there? Do we give the developers even more tax breaks, more incentives, make it easier for them to continue to charge these high rents? I don't know. Have we gotten to the point where that's all we can do? Again, I think we have totally mucked with the concept of a free market. Free market would have been, let them come and pay the value of the land without assuming they're going to get all these variances. And, you know, that would have been free market. Someone said to me one time, a couple of years ago, you know, before all of this started to happen with giving the developers all these variances and with the rezoning, we didn't need affordable housing. We had affordable housing. So I don't have the answer. I think that, Steve, you're right. I think we're, you know, we can do all of the surveys that we want that can be possibly done to find out what kinds of businesses people in the community would like. But how are we going to then get the owners to charge rents that these kinds of businesses could afford? I think it would be very easy to sit down. You can start right now. People would like shoemakers, they'd like clothing stores. You can just go down a whole list of things that I think, you know, all the things that Julia was talking about. I was here when we could see those kinds of shops and do that kind of shopping. It was amazing. Greenpoint was amazing when I first moved here 40 years ago. But they had to close because they couldn't afford the rent. So I don't know. I wish I had the answer. I've been fighting for years, and I continued to fight recently to try to get the city not to just continue to just allow the developers to come in and reap the benefits of paying their speculative prices. And now here we are, guys. Here we are. This is where we are. We're going to get restaurants and bars unless what? I don't know. I really don't have the answer. But I think I don't think it was a foregone conclusion. I don't think it had to happen. I've fought against it personally, against my own best interest. All these new market rate developments just make my property value go up and up and up. And against my own self-interest, I've begged people, don't do that. Don't give up on manufacturing spaces. Don't do that. I don't know. I feel like I don't know anymore what to do. And I think it's, I think, you know, people who've been developers and who have continued to push to let these developers continue to have these kinds of situations where they're just going to pay these outrageous, crazy prices, and then what do we think they're going to do? They're going to charge incredible rents. And then what? So then we'll give them tax breaks and give them more incentives. They'll continue to charge the rents, and then the city and taxpayers will pay to have the developers charge lower rents. I don't know.
So I'm gonna respond. I think you're painting a very one-dimensional picture that I vehemently disagree with. I'll tell you for one that I bought. I'd like to respond. I think the issue right now of the lack of retail diversity in the moment is because bars and restaurants are being given a 25 to 30% premium that has nothing to do with an owner, that has everything to do with government policy and some people who decided that restaurants are more deserving than any other type of business. And it's a pure game of math, what's going on right now. I think it's very good news that, as Ben pointed out, that wasn't voted on. I disagree with what you're saying about industry. I bought my site at the Williamsburg Hotel from a scrap metal yard, a 90-year-old owner who was retiring, who had 6 employees making minimum wage. I employ between 100 to 130 people, very many of them living in the community. We've taken housekeepers and put them on a career track where they're now salaried workers. So it's a very, very simplistic analysis that you just put forth that I disagree with. And I don't agree with you in terms of the survey. I think Julia made a great point. There's, for example, there's a shoemaker on the corner of North 10th and Berry, who's been there for a while, who is in the building of a real estate developer. And I think it would be very interesting to go and talk to him and understand, how does he maintain his business? I'm a customer of his. He has it's not a huge store. And I think what your approach, Del, is doing everyone here a disservice, both on the call and in the community, because to Ben's point, there are things you cannot change, and that's the force of economic evolution, and things you can change. And making sure that there's a unified effort and policies that allow small business to have, at a minimum, an even playing field. And today there is no even playing field, because if you're a restaurant, you're basically getting a 30%, 25 or 30% premium, and your net effective rent is less. And that was a bill that was almost passed and made permanent. But accusing developers of willy-nilly this and that, I don't know when you moved into this neighborhood. My grandfather's been here since the 1970s. So we can go down a path and talk about who came first. The Polish community was here first, then the Hispanic community. My grandfather was a tenant on the waterfront on the corner of North 10th and Kent, that was thrown out from his space that he didn't own because they were planning in 1980 a rezoning. So this is about Sante's point. It's a complex set of factors. What's happening right now in the moment is, if there isn't a thoughtful conversation about outdoor space that only benefits restaurants, everyone's going to suffer. And this has nothing to do and is not the responsibility of developers. This issue is a citywide issue. And members of the city council that I think put this forth without really, no one had bad intentions. Everyone has great intentions. They want to help the restaurants in their community and the entrepreneurs in their community, but it has dramatic impact. And I think, to Julia's point, there are gems of stores that are alive and succeeding, and whether it's because, as Paul mentioned, they have an online presence, or it's a shoemaker that managed to do 10 things. I've gone to him to fix a belt. He's doing, he obviously has figured out a business model that works in pretty expensive real estate on North 10th and Berry, next door to a restaurant, to really understand the reality of the stores that are succeeding and how to make sure that others have that opportunity. And I think blindly just putting forth an anti-development view is not helpful to this conversation. That's my thought.
Before I
Well,
pass the word to,
I'm sorry you think I'm, a detriment to the community, but that is my opinion. And we can agree to disagree.
before I pass the word to Paul, I'd love to tap in both what you and Toby were saying. we were pointing in Greenpoint, and for example, it's even not to do with the developer, and I'm in the land use committee. I believe one of our latest recommendation on Quay Street development, or at least I believe was my input, Dale, and you receive it, you transcribe it there as a recommendation, was about retail diversity. And I believe we put parameter, and so, I have to say, I'm against certain large scale development, but it's also true, certain development, if they actually bring an entity that produce 100 employee, maybe I want to glorify that, maybe that's has a positive impact. That definitely we can put the parameters in place. We can have a framework where we say, hey, retail diversity. Somebody questioned me at community board, right? What do you mean for retail diversity? I thought it was logic to say retail diversity. What they mean? If you open 10 storefront, and that's why I always ask Dale, what's the scale of the retail space, right? Because if you do like 10,000 square feet, we know it's going to be something big, maybe a pharmacy once again, and we don't need it. We have too many, CVS, Duane Reade, and who knows how many. So I believe putting a framework from our side, that's already enough. But going back to Greenpoint, for example, we have another dynamic. This 2-story, 3-story building, which they've been acquired by, I don't know if they can be called developer, some investor, they buy the building, they turn it over very fast, and their focus is like maximize $10,000, $12,000 rent. Francois mentioned the same building, historic building, brick building. They were, maybe the ground floor was residential. It's been reconverted to what historically was commercial storefront, but with a different ambition, the $10, $12, $15,000 a month rent. So it's even not a developer. It's a developer by this spot renovation of this small scale building. And that's, I believe, is some of the fabric in our neighborhood is really, really threatened, because we have a chance probably to put input from our land use committee, how we're gonna use those space. So,
And by the way, I want to just
we
Dale,
need that Paul
listen,
speaking.
I want to just add one thing, just Dell. This was the purpose of this joint committee is for dialogue and disagreement, and I have tremendous respect for everything that you do to protect the community. I think to Sante's point, there are developers that have done really bad things. The history of what's gone on in Bushwick, some of the stabilized units and people really doing horrific things to get rid of tenants. All I ask is that we not point to any specific category of, nothing is the fault only of elected officials or only of developers or only of members of bars. We fully intend, we actually reached out to Babar. We fully intend to bring them into this conversation. It's about bringing people together that have different perspectives and trying to come up with a practical way to have our voice heard when ours is only a suggestion. And it has nothing, you've done amazing work. And I say the hardest jobs in the community board are land use and the liquor committee. Those are very, very practical. There's a lot of pressure. And so kudos to you, Dell, for everything you've done. And the goal really is not that we all have to agree. If we all agree, there's no creativity, but that we need to dialogue with each other and try to come up with solutions to what's a very, very challenging problem that if we don't even try, nothing's going to change.
So let me just answer that. I agree. I think that I have no problem with people disagreeing with me and with myself disagreeing. I think it's very important for people to be able to talk to each other. I also think it's not very productive to say things to each other like you're a detriment to this community or you're a detriment to this group, because I disagree. Maybe I disagree with everybody who's here tonight, but it's an opinion, and I have no problem with people saying, well, they don't agree with me and they think it's completely wrong, and then why? I mean, I personally, I think it's a shame when people can't listen to other opinions. I think that just shuts everything down. And again, I didn't just focus on just developers either. But I think that what has happened is you get these variances where we've been enticed to get all of these, I have nothing against market rate housing either, But let's face it, in my opinion anyway, when we did the rezoning and we made it so that so developers really took it for granted that they would get all of these variances that were their variances. This is not what they were supposed to be buying the land on. We mucked up. In my opinion, we messed with the free market, and so now we're in that situation, you know. So where do we go? I don't know. I think that there may be solutions if we can get the city to work with us. And yes, Sante, we have been trying to get developers to give some kind of commitment to making spaces, at least some smaller spaces that would pretty much, you know, confine the use to not a bar and not a restaurant. Maybe it's a start. I don't know.
I want to pass the word to Paul. Sorry, Dale. He's been waiting for a while, and I want to take advantage of his presence here. Sorry, Paul.
No problem. I just want to say very quickly, and I don't want to speak about policy or variances or anything like that. I want to be much more basic. If I'm thinking about my lifelong ambition, I'm going to open a shop somewhere, whether it's, you know, has to do with, it's a gallery or a shoe store or whatever it is. You know, the first thing I do is I make sure I've got finances in order to be able to do it, because I don't want to be out on my ass in a week or two. The second thing I do is I look for a location where I think it's going to work. And to me, that has a lot to do with, you know, what we're currently going through right now. And I feel, and I mentioned perception earlier on, and when I spoke, I feel that, you know, we need to sell our communities somehow. I think we're losing that idea that people looking from the outside, and it's not always just looking from the inside at ourselves, but looking from the outside. You know, if I want to move in, if I want to take a shot and I want to open my shop in Bushwick or Greenpoint or Williamsburg, I want to know that I chose that neighborhood, that community, because I think my product is going to be accepted there, because I think I'm going to have an audience. I think I've researched places, and I don't want to go to Austin, and I don't want to go to Portland, and I want to go to Brooklyn, and I want to go here. And so I think that, you know, the important thing is we can have the space, even if we work out getting the space, but we have to create the interest. We have to create, recreate, you know, an ability to be able to offer the interest so that people look at our neighborhoods and go, yes, that's where I want to open my business. And I don't have solutions. I don't even have suggestions. So thank me for that if you want. I have nothing. But I just think on a more basic level, you know, whether it, you know, I'm thinking of things that we can do that, you know, without having to go to the city and whatever. I mean, do we need to promote our communities? Do we need to figure out a way of saying, this is where you want your business to be? This is where it was, this is what it can be, and you should be part of it. You know, as everyone was saying, Ben and Lincoln and everybody, nothing's going to happen overnight. But we have to think in a lot of different directions. The solution isn't going to come just from one specific focus in one direction. We have to think in a lot of different directions. And for me, one of the most basic things is, if I'm going to take a shot at opening a small business, I want to make sure that it's exactly where I want it to be, because I chose it, because I love that location and I love that neighborhood and I love those people, and I think the market is perfect for me. And that's about creating, I guess it's not really creating a brand again. Everybody throws that word around too much, the Brooklyn brand, whatever, but it's just about creating interest in the community. We need people to say, that's where I want my business to be. And then those businesses will be. We can't say we need them yet. We got to find people that want to come as well. It's not just all coming from one direction. So I just wanted to kind of blurt that out, because I think, you know, our focus goes pretty much in one direction, and there's a lot of people or a lot of elected officials or a lot of state officials or whatever to blame. But I think there's things that we should be able to do as well, which kind of elevates, you know, our communities from a small business standpoint. And then I just have to say also that I do need to jump. I thank you on behalf of myself and the North Brooklyn Chamber, and I'll speak for Elaine, whose name I still see there. I mean, thanks for asking us to contribute. Realize that she and I love nothing more than sitting in a room with creative, passionate, and intelligent individuals. So we're always available. So, I mean, reach out to us. We, love to continue the dialogue, love to help out any way we can. We're around. So, again, thank you. And if you continue this, please continue to let us know and we'll participate in the dialogue as it goes forward. But yeah, hey, there she is. Hi, Elaine.
Oh, hi, Len. Good to see you.
I've been here the whole time. I really have enjoyed this conversation. I think this is the way that we're going to get the interest back in our community. I think part of what happened was we didn't have this problem before COVID, and COVID, brought this. It's just unbelievable to me what has happened during this time. We're not out of it yet. As Paul said, we're here. We welcome these kind of conversations. We may not have all the answers, but we will try, whatever we can to make a connection, to get somebody some help. The other thing I would like to go back to what Francoise was talking about. I used to go take a yoga class like at 9 at night, at 10 at night, and walk home and feel safe. And you can't do that anymore, and I'm not sure if that's because there are not so many police around. I was never worried walking around late at night, and now you can't do this. Francoise has come to us several times and talked to us about the lack of security and the lack of police presence. People are talking about garbage. There's a whole lot of issues that are going on. And as Paul and everybody said, we don't have the answers, but we're glad to be part of the conversation and try and come up with some solutions. And as Paul said, we have to jump on another call soon. So I thank you all for all your input. Be well.
Thank you, Elaine and Paul. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Sure,
Thank you.
our pleasure. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's going to be an ongoing conversation, and that's what
Keep us in the loop, please.
We will. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Paul.
See you, Ben.
Hey, Santi, this is Forster. Paul made some good points. But yes, we are in a pandemic, and this started long before the pandemic. I wanted to ask Marie, how long or how many times does it take for a survey to happen to a community? I strongly still believe we need to survey the community to find out what is needed in the community. I personally see that there are not a lot of Black-owned industries in this community. One thing is for hair, and they don't succeed because the rent goes up. The rent goes up. I'm going to give an example. Carol Bridal Shop has been closed for over 5 years. I used to go in there and get all my little things because I do, little things, make little things, with my hot glue gun, and people maybe not be getting married like they used to have the big weddings and so on. But that place has been closed for over 5 years. Why? People cannot afford the rent. And that's what Paul was stating, to make sure you have your finances also. Location, location, location is good too. But if the landlord wants to keep jacking rent up, I'm going to give an example of what I'm saying is a young lady came to the SLA for her restaurant for us to recommend, thank you, Marie, for reminding me to state that word, a liquor license. But she had so many problems with her application. And we were like, we cannot recommend you. And she was so frustrated with us. And someone blatantly asked her, why do you need to sell alcohol? How else am I going to make money? And that was her answer. And I thought about that. We got a lot of folks that drink a lot in this neighborhood too. Folks are not shopping the way they used to, but There are people my age that still want to shop in the neighborhood. Like I said, I don't drink, period. The New Year's coming. I'm going to have some cider. Anybody want to join me? Fine. But we still, Marie, how long or how many years is it before they do a survey of the neighborhood? That's a question I, want to ask.
The question is, who are they?
So,
So, I mean, there may be surveys done by city planning. There may be surveys done by the Census Bureau when they come out with a 10-year census, and they also
Okay.
come out with American Community Survey, which
We
talks
could-
about
can we-
certain things with
Can
business.
we elicit our own survey from the board?
Yeah, but the question is, how do you structure that up? And if you already have entities in the neighborhood that may have done this or have those resources, like Evergreen, and I'm sure that I don't know if the people are still here from the business community. I think they're gone.
no, I think they left.
Yeah,
I think that we have to look at what's out there before you even say you want to do a
But-
survey.
Okay.
When I was on, if I could say, when I was on interned
Go,
with
Ben.
Gail, when I interned with Gail
Thank you,
Brewer
Marie.
thank you, about 10, 12 years ago, I spent me and another intern spent about a month walking the southern half of her district block by block, writing down what type of business was on each block. Not a very efficient maybe, but we got the job done. Another team did the north half. So
I mean,
ask your,
Ben, I mean, the North Brooklyn small business owners, we did do that for Franklin Street.
yeah,
Just,
I mean,
you
it
know,
takes,
it was pretty, you just literally walk down the street and take notes.
yeah.
And then a group of us kind of did it for green planters. So I can circle back to Julia and kind of see what happened with that, because that was, I think, most of Greenpoint and Williamsburg.
Then you got to deal with the data. You got to make sure the data is.
It was an insane Excel document, because then we also uploaded photographs of each storefront
well,
to the
that's-
document.
Yeah,
It was a pivot table. But I do think, but is that something that could be done through participatory budgeting? Like, could we ask for, if the chamber and the small business owners came together and just said, we want to do a small business survey of our neighborhood?
If you have a district doing expense funding, yes, it would have to be through expense funding through PB. You could always just ask. You could always put in a request. I mean, I don't think the chamber is a nonprofit, but you can do it with Evergreen's only the IBZ, so I'm not sure what maybe St. Nick's. I don't know. You might want to find a nonprofit, but or you just ask the council member for expense funding to do it, as long as there's a nonprofit that can and wants to.
but also, Francois, to tap on what Steve was saying, and one of the idea of having this conversation tonight, and this has been done in Europe, in a more other Scandinavian country, is community visions. And one of the big issue, I believe, in the history, because even the city council had all these beautiful points that were made and recommendation, and things were passed to other city agency, of which I don't know, they have lost the stamina along the way to do exactly that type of research and maybe tap in the community. Sometimes, the agency don't do the survey maybe the way the community really would want to know, because we have a meter, maybe here in Greenpoint, but there is other portion and other people in our district, in portion of the community we're not fully aware. And it's community vision. We need to shape it. We can build probably a way we could provide and create this input. You mentioned, yes, we can welcome Franklin. You did welcome Franklin, but we are very aware of what is happening in our community, for example. We should be in communication through the community board, through the other community organization, or even through, in Greenpoint, our Greenpoint Coalition, which is tapping to many individuals and is very uncontaminated. It's purely about quality of life and how we like to live and the changes we've been observing and we continue to observe every day. And so I don't know how exactly, but I believe we need to have a more active role in whatever type of survey is done. If one day, on the upcoming future, the city will really move more effectively in this regard.
Can
Elisa?
I ask Julia a question? Julia, with the survey, are you talking about a survey just to see what businesses are here, or are you talking about a survey to reach out to the community to get a sense of what kinds of things the community would want? Well, maybe you mean both. I don't know.
It could be both, but it was basically to find out what the community would want.
Right. That's what I thought. And I think that's a great idea. Because on the
Elisa.
land use committee, when we talk to the developers and we say, we want you to give us a commitment, that's not really, it doesn't really bind them, but at least, we have begun an effort. And when we say to the developers, we'd like you to make a commitment that you will give more diversity to the commercial space you're going to rent, it would be great to have a sense that, well, in this area, people really want these things, but in that area over there, this is what the people want. And then we could, maybe then if we had that kind of information, we could get the backing of our electeds to include that in their requirements.
Lisa?
Yeah, hi. I'm building on what Del is saying, and also Julia. The mechanism to get that is that I agree with you, Del. I think it's area by area, but inclusive of whole areas. And is it something that we ask City Council rep to help us in terms of maybe having town hall meetings, and then we go to the block associations, and it's going to be a patchwork. It's not going to be the same for every single block and every single demographic, and therefore we get more of a patchwork and more diversity.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think it's worth us investigating and maybe even asking the elected
Well, not only the elected officials, the community leaders. Like I live here in Cooper Park
Yeah.
houses. You got tenant associations, you got block associations.
Sure.
Not just the stores, like I said, it's the community. See what the people in the community want.
Yeah.
And speaking from the people that live in Cooper, I do know they want more retail because I hear it all the time. Although I am no longer their president, but I still hear it. We don't have anywhere to shop over here anymore. I go, no, we don't. Well, we got a whole lot of places to hang out. Yeah, you do. But,
yeah, exactly. Yes.
So
I agree.
Just saying, you can go to the leaders and definitely our council people. We got new council people coming in. We need to speak to them. Things didn't change overnight, and we know this is not going to change overnight, but it's a step, and it seems like it's going to be a good step. Asante, very good.
I agree, and I agree, Julia, with you that this did not really. I don't think we can blame the pandemic for all of this. I agree, this started before the pandemic.
Definitely had.
Absolutely, Del. I mean, the City Council document already was indicating that. I believe with the pandemic, the issue has been, some events have become predatory. We mentioned the word before, and intentionally or unintentionally, certain industry, they're taking advantage. That's normal, right? In business, we become opportunistic. That's fair enough. I'm a capitalist too, right? So there is opportunism, but I believe one of the responsibility from our system, from our politics, is that to measure, because things become criminal, and they take away democracy too. Because I lose the freedom to be an independent businessman. Then if I don't have, if I don't want to run a bar or a restaurant or another business or an industry, this happened before. Am I confined that that's it? What am I going to do? Do I have to be dependent from something else? Or if I don't have an higher level of education? I mentioned that before. It's very important. The local retail business give opportunity also to people as less higher education. But maybe very simply, it doesn't need to open a restaurant, which may even require or a bar today a higher level of sophistication because it's an entertainment business. It's about eat, drink, and play. And so even there, it's not that easily achievable. And I see here, there is a local maybe food, a pap and mom business, brick and mortar one. They have very big difficulty because they can't afford to be a bar and restaurant. So that's what I'm saying. It's an industry. But again, we're not accusing the industry. We want to really find a way. I'm very happy that really you all attended, that we have the North Brooklyn Chamber with Paul and Elaine and Lincoln Wrestler. I believe we have to become a constant presence. And I believe maybe I was new, I haven't been in the community board. You have been there for a very long time. Steve has been here longer, but definitely not as long as you and Julia and others have been in the community board. Maybe we have lost focus. And even the SLA review committee, and again, it's not just the issue of the economic development, they have been working together. Maybe Toby has mentioned that to me last time. So maybe we have to work together. Several committees have to work together if we want to rebuild this fabric socially, economically, architecturally, whatever. We have isolated, and when we've been divided, I'm assuming, in this vision. Even the community has been divided. And even a grassroots organization where more community, this is my observation. And again, I'm an immigrant and somebody didn't even know how this worked, but what I have understood, the even grassroots organization were truly the representation of the community. They have become organization by itself with people with salary, and definitely even there, you become a business, you seek the grants, you seek the salary, but we have to go back, and that was the idea of the outreach committee. And we don't have tools as outreach committee because the community board has very limited resources, as we know. So we can make all this list of things, but they go back to Marie or to Jerry and work with that capability. I believe talking, and there is no time even a community board now with the time restriction. So maybe the platform of the outreach committee together with the economic development committee, that's where we talk. And that's where community can come and talk about this. I mean, maybe that's the outreach we do. And the more people knows, the more people will come. I believe we made some step forward and so really, I thank you, anybody who was here tonight. But again, Toby, do you want to say something else? Because you're the chair of the economic development, and I
have to sign off. I'm on the train now, so I'm going to head out. But thank you so much. I'll see you around.
Okay, Ben, thank you.
Thanks.
Have a nice
I have to sign off too now. I had this other commitment that I'm out late to, but thank you for inviting me and for listening to me. All right, see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks, Deb.
Toby, before we run a motion.
I think Toby dropped off.
No, Toby is there, but probably she's driving. No, she's gone.
Oh, no, she's there. She's there. She's still here.
She's still there. I think she's driving.
Toby, are you there? I believe we're gonna probably, I'm gonna wait for her to be connected. Maybe we should I will make soon a motion to adjourn. At least you don't want to keep talking and saying other things. Elisa, Steve, Francois, anybody?
Say one thing that, we probably could obtain a very simple questionnaire that we put out to the various groups, so we could start building that along with everything else. And simpler is better. So, but I agree with you, Sante, that this is the forum to keep this discussion going, and it's long overdue.
Well, I guess I have a question about that. I mean, this has been a really great discussion, really important discussion, but it seems like it's an economic development discussion. I'm trying to figure out why it's an outreach committee discussion. Because I feel like we've talked very little about communication and outreach and the board. It's just more about, a specific issue that's very important to people who are in this meeting and how the board can work towards that. But I don't understand why it's an outreach committee issue.
I think, I mean, just for me, seeing it is a place for someone to come to be able to articulate their concerns, then to formalize it back to economic development. So again, I think we're trying to put these pieces back together. And I think a lot of good ideas came out of this that, we could put back in the right committees.
And I believe this was always an idea, to take advantage of our Reach committee as a first outreach itself, just having a platform where to talk about this outreach. And we have we don't, look, the reality is that we can envision everybody doing something else or doing this other outreach, but already talking and having these people talking for the community. This was already the first operation of outreach, I'm assuming. And I wish this could become something bigger, and we even have voted for things that probably me or you and the people that we always hear want to volunteer and even go in public places and talk and outreach more about topics. But this is one of the very important topics that has to do with the livability of a neighborhood, sustainability of a neighborhood. I believe it seems we went to the legal license, but it's just because there hasn't been any form of policy and went over there. But it's really not about that. It's about rent, affordable possibility for other. I mean, it's about being a neighborhood, and impact on parks. So now that could impact parks. I mean, there's so many layers. I mean, and Toby we've been, communicating on this and trying to unify these desire and these forces. Did I answer?
Sort of. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I have to go, guys, so I'm going to say
gotta go
goodnight.
too.
Thank
Toby,
you for
Toby,
everybody.
are you there?
She popped in and popped out. I mean, I don't know what's going on with her video, maybe because she's driving.
No.
She appears there from a phone, but not.
Yeah, her mic is off, so I can't even speak to her.
Her mic is off.
Yes, she's got it off.
I mean, she can't talk, but she can listen.
Toby. She
That's
tried.
good.
Okay, guys. So then, if she's probably has a connection problem, maybe I'll call it. You all have to go. It's 8 o'clock. She's probably
you.
popping in and out.
I'm sorry, Santi.
I'll
my
call
phone-
for a motion. Toby, I was going to call for a motion to
Go on
adjourn.
again.
No, I apologize. My phone froze. I'm back. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, I'm listening.
Do you want to say something to close? I'm going to
No,
call
that's
for.
fine. I just wanted to commend you again and express appreciation to everyone who participated. We look forward to having consistent meetings and really trying to drive action. And anyone who's willing to meet in person, Sante and I have been meeting every other week. So we would love to do this in person, outside of the construct of the formal meeting to help move this forward. Go ahead, Sante.
That's all. Motion to adjourn.
Hold on a minute. Toby, I sent you a message. Could you give me a telephone call? If not tonight, tomorrow?
Yeah. Do you have my cell phone number?
No, I don't. I was sending you mine.
Yeah, let me get
I'll get it from Marie because we're like
Oh
getting
yeah,
ready
no problem. And thank you all.
Okay.
And Francois, I really appreciate your insight and everyone who's taken the time to join us. I think the goal is we started a process. We really need to continue to move this forward. And
Okay. Thank you, Francois. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Joe. Maureen. Bye.
Good night, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Okay. Same to you. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Marie.
Leaving.